It's Sunday, it's 8 February. I'm Charlie Garrett, and this is the CG Prophecy Report. Hemispheres. That and a lot of other things to go over on today's report. All right, let's see here. We got some news from Israel here, from JNS. In first, Israeli bobsled team.
Yes.
Yeah, qualifies for the Winter Olympics.
Nice.
Yeah, initially the four-man team finished one slot shy of making the cut, but cleared it anyway after one of the qualifying teams, Great Britain, opted out of using its full allocation of athletes, opening the slots to the Israeli team. The bobsleigh athletes finished high enough in the world rankings that Israel was next in line for a quota. Pilots and teams need to compete in several international races organized by the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation to qualify for the Winter Olympics. Results from those races are tallied into the IBSF combined rank lists that determine eligibility. The qualification of the bobsleighers from Israel, a warm country where snow occurs regularly only for short periods in small, high-altitude areas, has drawn humorous comparisons to the plot of the 1993 comedy Cool Runnings. Yes, okay, there you go. From the Jerusalem Post, Hostages Square. This is about 10 days ago, but it's worth reporting. Countdown clock stopped after 843 days. The clock's original purpose was to mark the amount of time that the Israeli hostages were in captivity after being kidnapped on October 7th. During that time, the forum said in a statement, time itself seemed to stand still for the families and for the entire nation. After 844 days, more than 20,250 hours, over 1,215,000 minutes, and more than 920,000 seconds, we can finally bring the counter to an end. So there you go. Israel is no longer waiting for any of its hostages to come home. From all Israel, Israel reportedly seeks to secure a new decade-long security deal with Washington. Now, just a week ago, Netanyahu said, we're cutting ties as quickly as possible from all countries. We need to be self-sufficient. And then the next week, we're doing a decade-long security deal. Doesn't contrast what he said. This was in the works, and now they want to firm it up because they do want to get away with this, though, because they know that the left in this nation will no longer support them. And if they can even cut an agreement with Israel that is already standing, they're going to try to do it. I mean, they have completely abandoned. And just think about this. This is not even six years ago. Every single member of the House and Senate would vote pro-Israel. Every one of them. If there was something against Israel, they voted for it. And now it's almost a goner on the left, and the right is having its own trouble. So, okay, Israeli officials reportedly want to secure contained U.S. military assistance, even as signals from Jerusalem suggest it is seeking a more independent long-term future without relying on billions of dollars in U.S. grants. The partnership is more important than just the net financial issue. In this context, there are a lot of things that are equal to money. The view of this needs to be wider. The free money, and we talked about that last week under a different New York's free childcare. Nothing is free. But for them, they don't have to do anything. America just gives it to them. So amounting to $3.3 billion annually that Jerusalem can use to buy American arms constitutes one component of the memorandum of understanding that could decrease gradually. And I would say it will, depending on the next election. Prime Minister Netanyahu indicated earlier this month that he intends to end Jerusalem's military aid agreement with Washington within the next decade. He said this move was already in motion and that he believes the Jewish state should be as independent as possible. I'd like to do everything I can to fight the propaganda war against us. A comment that appeared to reference a common perception that U.S. taxpayers finance Israel's defense while highlighting what he described as the intelligence and technological benefits Washington receives in return. And yes, we give them a lot of money, but it's one of the countries that we benefit hugely from in technology in particular, hugely. Netanyahu also said he will continue to fight for the allegiance of the American people. Senior Israeli officials have increasingly signaled that Israel needs to reduce its reliance on imports of critical military hardware. They know that that is their Achilles heel at this point, and they have to be self-sustaining. From All Israel, here it is. This was just like 2 months ago, maybe a month and a half ago. They were excluded from the Guinness World Records. Now, All Israel, Guinness World Record lifts ban on Israeli submissions. And it recognizes a new Israeli record marking 2,000 kidney transplants. So they have world records in the most bizarre things nowadays. I mean, when I was young, remember you used to get that little paperback thing that was about this thick, and I read every word of every world record. You know, you have the biggest guy and the strongest guy and the tallest guy and all these neat things. Now they have the number of kidney transplants. Okay, got some news from Christianity here. From GB News, this is in the UK. Met Police bans Walk with Jesus March to avoid provoking local Muslim community. This is what's going on in the UK. I mean, you no longer have free speech there, and they're being looked over right now by the U.S. Congress because of this. But they not only that, they have stymied freedom of religion for people to walk openly and say, I proclaim Jesus. Scotland Yard has stopped a UKIP march from going ahead in East London over fears of provoking the local Muslim community. The demonstration, titled Walk with Jesus, was scheduled in Whitechapel, long home to one of Britain's largest Islamic populations. Metropolitan Police officials said permitting the event in that location would be reckless. Here it is, given the potential for violence. So they acknowledge right there that the people they keep importing are going to be harmful to society. You wait. I got an article. I'll probably include it next week that it made my jaw drop at what they're doing in the UK. But social media advertisements promoted the gathering as a Christian march, inviting participants to worship Jesus Christ during January, which organizers described as the month dedicated to the holy name of Jesus. Authorities confirmed the march could take place elsewhere, but not in Whitechapel. This marks the second UKIP event ban from Tower Hamlets in recent months. In October, the Met outlawed a planned demonstration called the Mass Deportations Tour over fears of serious disorder. So people want deportations, and, you know, we do that in America, and people go crazy, and it's worse over there. That decision prompted a counter-protest in which hundreds of men from the local Bangladeshi community wearing masks, baklavas, and dark clothing gathered in the streets. Protesters descended on Whitechapel to stand firm and show that they were ready to defend our community. And columns of men could be seen chanting Allah Akbar as they marched. Nigel Farage described the scenes as one of the most terrifying things he had ever witnessed. It was like a foreign invading army marching through our streets. I defy anyone in this room to tell me that's wrong. I really, genuinely do, he says. From the post-millennial, Jennifer Welsh. I don't even know who she is, but she just said something really typical of the left, claims Christians are not being persecuted. As she says, white evangelical Christianity is a cancer, the worst people in our country. So we're not being persecuted, but she's persecuting us. Okay. While making the comment, she named people such as Erica Kirk and cited the Christian tendency to vote for Trump as a reason to oppose them and claim Christians are not getting persecuted. These are the worst people in our country because they use their religion in two ways, as a weapon and a shield. They weaponize. What do you think that Islam does? If you don't think...
Yeah. Yep.
They weaponize it whenever they want to, and they say, we're on the moral high ground. You're a lesbian. You deserve to die. You know, I've never heard a Christian say that. I'm talking about a true Christian. I've seen people say things like that, but you're a lesbian. The cops shouldn't have revived you. Oh, your parents are Mexicans, and they brought you over here. Yeah, you should go to jail and eat worm food. I hear this all the time from Christians. Absolutely. Then when you call them out on it, oh, my God, they're after the Christians. How dare they? How dare they? We're so oppressed, Welch added, mocking those who are Christian. Welch, the far-left commentator as well as TV personality, has previously called for Trump voters to be banned from Mexican, Chinese, and Indian restaurants over their views on immigration, as well as other far-left takes. You know, if I got banned from Indian food, there would be a serious revolt in Sarasota. I love Indian food. Now, I haven't eaten any for almost a year now because of the hello, but, you know, okay, I got to stop right now talking about food. I have been feeling better. I got better, and then I ate too much stuff all at once. And so I had a little regress, and I thought, I'm not going to do that again. But this week I had pizza, and I was okay. And then I had some more pizza a day ago. I was okay. And Hidiko's been saving me some of Mary Lee's birthday cake from last week. And I had it last night, and it was great. Thank you. So I will be back to Indian food eventually. But once you have an ulcer, I didn't realize how long these things take to clear up. Even after you get rid of the H. pylori bacteria, wow. Don't get an ulcer. I keep telling people, don't. If you want to know, because I've never said this to the people online, having an ulcer is not sharp pain. It's not like you're like, nothing like that. And so when I say this, don't think of sharp pain, but think of the feeling. You have, we'll say, a rat inside of you, and he's gnawing to get out of you. That's what it feels like. Just a constant drum of pain. And the problem is you only feel better when you eat. And so you eat all the time, and then you gain weight. And Charlie Garrett, who's wearing the same pants that I've worn since high school, no longer fits his, So it's a problem. And so you have to learn to regulate your eating, and you can only eat cabbage and boiled chicken, and that's about it for months, right? And eventually you kind of get through it, hopefully. But it's not an easy thing, so stay away from ulcers, all right? From Fox News, knife-wielding nut allegedly asked Christian his religion. Now, nobody's getting persecuted for Christianity in America. Then stabbed him and dog before police shot him. So we got nobody persecuting Christians here, but he asks if he's a Christian, yes, and then he starts getting stabbed. An armed Washington man was shot and killed by police after authorities say he stabbed a man and the victim's dog, like the dog did something, attacking them moments after asking the victim what religion he practiced. Gateway Pundit. South Korean leftists introduced, the only news source I know of that is watching this is the Gateway Pundit. And they're very far right in most things. That's fine. But sometimes they go too far on something, and I won't, post that to the CG report. But they are watching this, and they're only people that are doing it. South Korea is the largest Christian nation, I think, in Asia. And it sends more missionaries than the United States does. I mean, it is a huge Christian nation. They took to Christianity like America did. There are churches on every corner if you ever go there. It's unbelievable. But a group of lawmakers, I better read the title, South Korean leftists introduced legislation to dissolve churches on political grounds. A group of lawmakers has introduced what is effectively a church dissolution law, giving the government broad authority to shut down religious organizations on political grounds. 11 lawmakers, and this is how it starts. It starts with a few people, and it just like it has in the Democrat Party. 11 lawmakers in total are pushing this measure. The proposed amendment to the Civil Act allows the government to investigate, suspend, or dissolve nonprofit religious bodies by expanding the definition of public interest violations. It also enables asset seizure and indefinite administrative control. The most alarming part is that the bill's own explanation cites recent cases where specific religious groups supported political activities. This language directly points to conservative and opposition-aligned churches. The bill openly targets them under the pretext of preventing abuse of legal status. Watch South Korea, because they have not been doing well in the past year or so, and they're wonderful people. Some of you know that we went to the Korean restaurant here until they finally closed this past year, but such strong Christian people. I attended the Korean church here in Sarasota for years, and they love the Lord, and they just exude Jesus, and now their country is losing that very quickly. Got some news from the Mideast and Africa today. Breitbart. Starmer, UK. Starmer is a traitor. Thousands protest planned migrant camp in small English town. Okay? Small English town. Replacement. We have replacement theology where the church replaces Israel. Okay, well, we have replacement townology in the UK. Thousands of English locals turned out onto the streets of East Sussex to protest against plans to house hundreds of alleged asylum seekers at a former military training camp in Crowborough. This week, the Home Office, the government department tasked with controlling Britain's borders and immigration system, began transferring migrants to the East Sussex camp. Now, when they're in this area, they become counted as a part of the area. Remember, they were doing this in Ireland last year. They were moving 300 and 400 people into towns of only 80 people. And so the town immediately loses its identity. It's done. Okay, so with 27 alleged asylum seekers being brought into the camp, the site, which is earmarked to hold up to 500 migrants at any one time, was commandeered by the government as it seeks to lessen its dependency on UK hotels to house migrants while their asylum claims are processed. According to the government, the migrants will only be stationed at the camp for 3 months at most. Never trust the government. However, the move has nonetheless sparked local concerns in Crowborough, with opponents pointing to previous examples of crimes committed by the hands of hotel migrants, including the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl by an Ethiopian hotel migrant just days after breaking into the country illegally. As of September, the government was housing around 36,273 supposed asylum seekers in hotels. This figure is likely to continue to rise given the more than 41,000 illegal migrants who reached British shores last year. The government has vowed to shut down the migrant hotel scheme by 2029. Home Secretary Mahmoud has said that while she understands there is a strong strength of feeling in opposition to the Crowborough camp, she said that it is crucial to the transition away from migrant hotels and therefore vowed to vigorously defend the project against any legal challenges from locals. So we'll watch that. Breitbart. Iran to accept more deportees from U.S. I think this has already happened. It was earlier in the week as Trump's armada parks in the Middle East. We were getting in millions of people a month last year or 2 years ago, and now we're getting rid of people. Even countries that said we will not take any of our people back are getting them back because we have a leader that is ensuring it will happen. The Iranian regime said that it would accept a group of deportees from the U.S. who have been held for months in immigration detention centers. It was the third time Iran has accepted deportees since Trump returned to office. From GPH, 3 former members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard who entered illegally are being sent back. In an operation that reinforces security and immigration control, 3 former members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard were deported after illegally entering the country during the Biden admin. They are members of the Iran Revolutionary Guard coming over the border freely. These guys, I've seen their pictures. They'll be online. They look like serious individuals. You know, you got these SAS guys who walk around and you say, you know, that's a bad dude. These guys looked like really bad dudes, okay? And they just walked right over the border. Now, what would prompt them to go into Mexico and just walk up here, all right? Authorities indicated that the individuals exploited gaps in border controls. There were no gaps. It was just open borders and the lax policies implemented in recent years. According to official sources, their presence posed a direct risk to the safety of local communities and to national stability. Homeland Security investigators detailed that deportees appeared in international surveillance databases and that their records confirmed their membership in Iran's Revolutionary Guard. They were sent here. They were sent here on a mission. From Washington Free Beacon, Palestinian Authority promised terrorists more than $200 million in pay-to-slay payments after it scrapped the program. They said, we're done with it. I said that, about 4 months ago? Since then, they still paid $200 million. State Department tells Congress. PA President Mahmoud Abbas said his government would no longer pay terrorists and their families as a part of an agreement with the Biden administration. Of course, that was false. Gateway pundit, Spain's socialist government moves to legalize up to 500,000 illegal migrants in sweeping decree. They are national suicide. They're over there and they're doing these things. And this is what they wanted here. Okay. It's not that we don't want immigrants. My wife is an immigrant. We got all kinds of immigrants in America. They're very productive people, but they have to come here legally and there must be vetting. They're not doing that. They come in on a boat and we want to give you amnesty and now you're a citizen. Iran's ABC, Iran's currency, the rial, again, I reported on this like 3 times in the past 2 months, falls to 1.5 million to $1. a record low after nationwide protests sparked by economic woes. Their real is worth absolutely nothing now. Mongolia Asia News, 78 foreign nationals from 12 countries deported from Mongolia. Now, nobody's angry at Mongolia for deporting people. Nope, I haven't heard anybody protest Mongolia. They have their own little ICE unit and they get rid of people, and guess what? The deportations were ordered for reasons including overstaying visas or residence permits, working without the required permission, engaging in activities other than declared purpose of entry, which is the big subject right now in America, and cases where foreigners had been convicted and served sentences. Mongolia is getting rid of people. Daniel 12 Technology today. Zero Hedge. Scientists pioneer reverse solar panels to create energy at night. Now, I'm not a solar energy guy. I don't have them on my house, and I don't want them on my house, and I don't want a wind farm at my house. But if you're going to have something and you're going to have it do something half the day, it would be nice to have it do it the whole day. Now, don't get excited. This is a long way out. They can get enough to start maybe I don't know, not a light bulb, but maybe I'm trying to think of an LED. Yeah, something like that. It's very little so far, but at least it's something they know now works. The device works by capturing heat absorbed by the Earth during the day and radiating it out at night, offering a way to generate power when traditional solar panels are inactive. While currently producing a small amount of power, the long-term goal for this technology is to power small devices overnight or even supply energy to satellites when they pass through the dark side of their orbit. On a global level, solar energy has grown exponentially over the last few decades as costs have plummeted and demand has risen accordingly. It is estimated that the world added a third more solar power in 2025 than it did in 2024, marking a remarkable quantity of added capacity. But while renewables are proving too cheap to fail, there are some notable drawbacks to the rapid addition of these resources. They're not too cheap to fail. They are very harmful to the environment. That's the problem. Most notably, the insufficient co-addition of supportive grid and transmission infrastructure and the variability of solar and wind energy, both of which pose significant threat to energy security around the world. Unlike fossil fuels, the level of production of which can be manipulated at will to meet demand, solar and wind energy are dependent upon natural variables outside of human control. The production rate of solar panels depends on the length of the day and the quality of the sunlight, and the most productive hours are often at odds with demand peaks. But a team of scientists in Australia is working on a way to fix that problem by developing a novel type of solar panel that could work at night. Out in space, this is going to be a lot more useful, for satellites and stuff, but this is still kind of interesting. It's a sort of solar panel in reverse, which works by emitting light rather than absorbing it. Instead of using photovoltaics to capture sunlight, this device uses a semiconductor called a thermoradiative diode capable of converting heat into energy. The heat that these devices are using is solar energy, but captured through the heat absorbed by the Earth during sunlight hours, which is then released as an infrared energy well after the sun is set. Solar cells generate an electric current by absorbing photons from a hotter object, whereas thermoradiative diodes generate a current by emitting photons of infrared light into colder surroundings. So far, the device can generate only a very small amount of electricity, around 100,000 times less than that of a conventional solar panel. So it's not a lot. But someday, these thermoradiative diode semiconductors could have a much grander application, powering satellites orbiting the Earth. These satellites vacillate between light and darkness in relatively quick cycles, and attaching thermoradiative diodes could help to power these devices when they're out of reach of sunlight and in the extremely cold temperatures of space. And like I said, everything takes power of some type. I remember hearing a study, how much power does it take to use your blinkers on your car when you use them, right? And they can check that. They know. It was a very small amount. It's like what you have to do is you have to figure out how long it's on, et cetera, et cetera. And they did this calculation, and it came out to over the lifespan of your car. If you use your blinker, I think you spend like 2 cents of gas or something. It's not much. But because it uses that, I never use my blinkers. I make a point of it. When I get my car, I drain the blinker fluid out of it, and so I have no blinker fluid, and they will not come on. So, because I'm saving that 2 cents, right? All right, it's a dangerous world, including the inevitable plagues in the book of Revelation. From the Independent, what is Nipah virus? I've reported on this a couple times over the years, and symptoms to watch out for as India races to contain the deadly outbreak. They've had a real problem. It's got a very high death rate. So once again, I'll tell you about Nipah virus. Why? Because there was nothing else to report on from last week. Nipah is a deadly virus with no vaccine or cure. Is considered high-risk pathogen. Experts say human infections are rare and usually occur when the virus spills over from bats, often through contaminated fruit. The incubation period is generally believed to range from 4 to 21 days. Patients typically develop a sudden flu-like illness marked by fever, headache, muscle pain, and fatigue. In some cases, respiratory symptoms such as cough, shortness of breath, or pneumonia also occur. Although the timing and severity of these symptoms can vary widely, the most serious and defining complication of Nipah infection is inflammation of the brain known as encephalitis. Neurological symptoms include confusion, altered consciousness, seizures, or coma. Some patients may also develop meningitis. And then from ABC, India says it has contained Nipah virus outbreak as some Asian countries ramp up health screening. So it moves around. Once it's in there, it's like anything else. I watched we're started with the first one, and we're going through the whole thing, is Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Remember him? It was great show. And one of them we watched about a week ago. This is when we're eating dinner. It's the only time we have together, and so we watch something and ignore each other. But the one that I watched this past week was a outbreak of anthrax. I don't know if you all saw it and remember it, but a bongo drum was bought in Mexico, and it was taken from an animal that had died that had gotten anthrax in it, and it was scary. I mean, one guy's playing the bongo drum, and then they had to, everybody that touched anything around this dead body, they had to burn all of their clothes, and you could see how quickly something like this can spread. You know, it's very scary. So, we go to the projects. We're in there every Saturday, and we always go out to lunch afterward. We got 4 or 5 of us here that were there yesterday. And what is the first thing we do when we get to where we're going? We wash our hands. Very first thing. I don't touch anything until I go in, not because the people are dirty, but because the conditions are dirty, right? And so it's just one little thing you can do because, man, that was such a scary episode. And it wasn't intended to be, but you're thinking how this could get out of control so quickly. Anyway, morality. Are you ready for this? The post-millennial Virginia Democrats move to eliminate mandatory minimum sentences for violent crimes, including rape, manslaughter, and child porn. It has not worked anywhere else. It has ruined the infrastructure, and they're doing it now in Virginia because she won the election. Gateway Pundit, University of Utah offers course on black, trans, lesbian Marxists. Yeah, what? HHS.gov. HHS Education refer Minnesota to the Department of Justice for allowing males in girls' sports. Breitbart, HHS. Illinois law forcing pro-life doctors to provide abortion referrals is against federal law because they've been forcing them to. Gateway Pundit, Virginia nurse placed on leave pending investigation following social media post encouraging people to poison ICE agents. A nurse. Education.gov, U.S. Department of Education finds California Department of Education violated federal law by hiding students' gender transitions from parents. Gateway Pundit, Chicago teacher placed on leave over Facebook post expressing support for ICE. Gateway Pundit, Florida revokes, you probably heard about this one, nursing license for nurse who wished severe injuries on Carolyn Levitt. Right? This is a nurse. Publicly coming out and posting this kind of stuff is not the smartest thing to do. LifeSite, California Children's Hospital stops gender transitions due to Trump admin pressure. LA Times, UCLA Medical School uses a systematically racist approach to admissions, the DOJ alleges. They're giving larger classes to white students and very small classes to the non-white students. Breitbart, HHS ends Biden rule mandating pharmacies dispense abortion drugs. They don't want to, and they made them buy those things and then resell them. You have to buy these things. That's not a free market there. Zero Hedge, Harvard-backed program drops students of color requirement after a legal complaint. Harvard. I got some other news for you today from Congress.gov. Summary, H.R. 22, 119th Congress, 2025-2026. I do not think this is going to pass. I just want you to know what the bill says. Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or the SAVE Act. This bill requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. What's his name? Schumer's been coming out and saying it's Jim Crow, which, by the way, was Democrats, not okay. But they ignore that. And they are saying it's racist and blah, blah, blah. And, they did this 2 years ago. They walked around before the elections in New York. They went to the black neighborhoods, and these people had no idea. They said, that's not racist. They said, I had to register to get this, right? They're walking around with their phone. Not one of those people thinks it's racist. The only people that thinks it's racist are the politicians that want to hide what they're doing in the elections. The bill prohibits states from accepting and processing an application to register to vote in a federal election unless the applicant presents documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The bill specifies what documents are considered acceptable proof of U.S. citizenship, such as ID that complies with the Real Act of 2005 that indicates U.S. citizenship. Further, the bill, 1, prohibits states from registering an individual to vote in a federal election unless, at the time the individual applies to register to vote, the individual provides documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, and 2, requires states to establish an alternative process under which an applicant may submit other evidence to demonstrate U.S. citizenship. Each state must take affirmative steps on an ongoing basis to ensure that only U.S. citizens are registered to vote, which shall include establishing a program to identify individuals who are not U.S. citizens using information supplied by certain sources. Additionally, states must remove non-citizens from their official lists of eligible voters. This is the most common sense law that I can think of, and they are coming out storming against it. The bill allows for a private right of action against an election official who registers an application to vote in a federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The bill establishes criminal penalties for certain offenses, including registering an applicant to vote in a federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. There you go. That's all it says. Breitbart, European Union opens borders to mass India migration with the mother of all deals. Now, this is kind of a backdoor thing for them. They made a free trade agreement with India. It's the largest one in the world now. It used to be Canada and U.S. and Mexico was kind of free trade, except this and this and this. But we do get avocados, so that's good. All of my trees, all my fruit trees died. And so I immediately went out and planted avocados. We're going to have so many avocados pretty soon. You're going to be begging me to not bring them, just like you did with the mangoes. My mango tree is going to take a couple years to get up to mango size. But yes, the avocado tree is already, it's just, even in the winter, it's growing. So I'm very happy. I planted some, what do you call it? Ruby red, what do you call it?
Grapefruit.
Grapefruit, thank you. Oh. I got some guavas. I got all kinds of fruit. Man, I've got more papaya. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos I put out on my papayas, but I didn't plant any of them. The storm brought in papaya seeds, and I have thousands of papayas on my property. They're not turning orange now because it's cold, but as soon as it gets warm, you're going to be like, Charlie, please don't bring any more papayas, okay? They're everywhere. But the neatest thing, it also planted flowers everywhere. I didn't plant any of those flowers. And you see the videos, they're everywhere. It's like a little Garden of Eden, and I didn't plant any of them. So thank you, Lord. Even in disaster, you have beauty. I planted a durian. I bought a durian, but it died because of DHS. DHS lost the shipment for 10 days. So I got one jackfruit out of 5 plants. DHS held it for 10 days, and they all came and died except one. So what was that?
papaya, good for digestion.
They're very good for digestion. That's right. And they're also good for give you supple skin. I'm kidding. Anyway, okay, so the European Union, they have this free trade agreement. And from this free trade agreement, they also are allowing immigration much freer now. And there are 1.1 billion Indians or something, and they're all going to want to go there. I mean, it's higher pay, et cetera, et cetera. So the EU has agreed to open its borders to mass immigration from India as it cites. Now, don't get me wrong. The Indians are very hardworking people for the most part. Not all of them. There's a lot of crime, et cetera, because when you got that many people jammed together, there is a lot of crime in India. But they're hardworking, they're very intelligent, and they are from the line of Japheth, okay? So they will meld well with the people in the EU. Unlike the people from Shem and Ham, there's going to be no melding, and there has been no melding. But the Indians are Japhethites, and so it's the same stock and breed of people, along with Iran, which, the Bible tells you all these people groups, and you wonder why the world is the way it is until you know what the Bible says in the Table of Nations. And then you say, oh, I understand why the world works the way it does. Anyway, Ursula von der Leyen said the bloc has agreed to a mobility scheme to allow for the influx of students, researchers, seasonal and highly skilled workers from India into Europe. The EU chief also said that Brussels will open a legal gateway office in India to help facilitate migrants to move to Europe. This is good for our economies. This is good for the friendship between our people. This openness benefits us all. Despite the scale of the changes agreed, reports in the legacy media generally ignored or buried the migration aspect of the agreements, reporting heavily on the concomitant trade agreement signed alongside. So their news is saying we got a great trade agreement, but they're ignoring telling the people about the migration part of it. India already ranks among the top countries of origin for legal migration into the EU, with Indian nationals receiving the second most first-time residence permits among any nationality in 2024, at the 192,400, only behind Ukraine, which is almost 300,000. According to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, there are currently over 800,000 Indians living in the EU. Well, that's only going to go way, way up after this. And I am not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that people are not compatible between the sons of Noah. They are. I married a daughter of Ham, right? And we get along pretty well, I guess. She does have a knife, which keeps me, she's Japanese, so she gets that Ginsu knife. But yeah, best wife in the world. Almost 42 years now, guys. From HUD.gov, cleaning house. HUD orders immediate citizenship verification for all tenants in HUD-funded housing nationwide. Big thing there. Following a HUD and DHS audit into all tenants across HUD-funded housing nationwide, HUD discovered nearly 200,000 tenants requiring eligibility verification, nearly 25,000 deceased tenants, and nearly 6,000 ineligible non-American tenants. HUD announced that all PHAs and owners participating in HUD-funded housing have 30 days, and it's probably down to 20 by now because this article's, who knows, a week. I don't know exactly when they got their information from that, but they have 30 days to take corrective action to address these findings. PHAs and owners who fail to comply with the established requirements will be subject to sanctions. HUD will recapture funding payments made on behalf of ineligible and deceased tenants. Good. From TASS, Pentagon names protecting U.S. interests in Western Hemisphere as key defense priority. Have you heard this, Colonel? Key defense priority.
Right.
Have you heard that? Okay. As President Trump has said, the U.S. military's foremost priority is to defend the U.S. homeland. The department will therefore prioritize doing just that, including by defending America's interests throughout the Western Hemisphere. The document reads, the U.S. will no longer cede access over influence over key terrain in the Western Hemisphere, from the Arctic to South America, according to its updated national defense strategy. Department of War will therefore provide the president with credible options to guarantee U.S. military and commercial access to key terrain from the Arctic to South America, especially Greenland, the Gulf of America, I like that, and the Panama Canal. And I still say Gulf of Mexico. I mean, I grew up swimming in it every day of my life, and I can't get that out of my head. So I'm going to get deported soon. We will ensure that the Monroe Doctrine is upheld in our time. The U.S. plans to focus on defending its own territory and views the Indo-Pacific region as its top priority. Therefore, its aid to allies in other regions will be reduced. As U.S. forces focus on homeland defense and the Indo-Pacific, our allies and partners elsewhere will take primary responsibility for their own defense with critical but more limited support from American forces. In other words, we're in Japan. We've been there since the occupation in the late 40s. We have primary responsibility. Trump wants to let them have primary responsibility, and we will have secondary authority. It's what should have happened a long time ago. We've been doing it all over the world, and it's a good doctrine, I think.
Right. They've adjusted the combatant commands to the effect that
yes.
in Hemisphere forthcoming.
Right.
Focus.
Good. Do you agree with it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right.
Duh.
Yeah, if you want to know, ask the colonel, right? U.S. allies in Europe, the Middle East, and the Korean Peninsula should undertake the primary responsibility for their own security. The document says the administration, led by the president, will be pressing and enabling U.S. allies and partners to make them more responsibility for their own security. In the past, Washington used to allow its allies to spend less on defense, but now it wants them to share this responsibility. Certainly, it was their allies and partners' own decision to underinvest in their respective defenses, but it was a decision often encouraged by past U.S. policymakers who imprudently believed that the United States benefited from allies who were more dependencies than they were partners. You know, it's the old, we'll tell you what to do, and then, yeah. Anyway, Zero Hedge, Chinese contract at Panama Canal ruled unconstitutional in win for Trump's Monroe Doctrine. Marine Insight, China overtakes Russia and becomes the world's second biggest operator of nuclear submarines. Yeah, Newsweek, Zoran Mandani invites everyone to apply for, here it is, we talked about it a week ago, free childcare. Yeah. Free. MSN, Mandani clarifies New York City won't check immigration status for universal childcare enrollees. Wow. No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to them. Center Square in exiting Japan, John Deere building $70 million factory in North Carolina. They moved out, and with Trump, they are now moving back in. Defense news. Ukraine says more than 80% of enemy targets now destroyed by drones. It's become a totally different dynamic in warfare since Russia and Ukraine got into it. United 24, Ukraine destroyed 15 Russian aircraft in 2025, drone strikes worth $1 billion in damage. Just little drones. You can whip them together for almost nothing, put a little bomb on them, out it goes. Total different dynamic nowadays. Guardian, Ukraine war briefing, nearly 2 million military casualties to date. Study finds with Russia bearing brunt of losses. 2 million people. United 24, Russia lost twice as many troops in 1 month as USSR did in 10 years in Afghanistan. And they lost to Afghanistan. Zero Hedge, Maryland jury rules Walmart is liable for selling shotgun used in employee suicide. Wow. That will never be upheld. It will be overthrown. But can you imagine that? Next thing that's going to happen is if you sell a car and a kid drives it off the thing and runs himself into he wanted to commit suicide, car makers are going to be liable for that cannot stand up in court. But Maryland decided that it does. Zero Hedge, Shakespeare was a black Jewish woman, claims feminist historian. Yeah, well, now you know.
Wow. That's helpful.
Yeah, it was a lot of mascara he put on. That cover-up stuff. She. Okay, who said it? Before you judge a man, walk a mile in his shoes. After that, who cares? He's a mile away and you got his shoes. No, I hadn't heard of this guy. He's apparently an actor, which means I probably haven't heard of him. But Billy Connolly? Okay, nobody has. All right, sorry. That was unfair then if nobody's heard of him, but I thought it was just me. Okay, we got a Catholic here for you today. Less punted to Kathy. The West from the South to the North Pole will be viewed by us as a whole. Nothing east can come near trying to interfere, or else Trump would exact a toll. Good job, Kathy. Okay, I got a couple ironies here. Let's see. Yeah, this is ironic. Mail online. I can tell you this stuff stinks. When I was a kid, right, I never got into pot. That was not my thing. But people used to go out and they called it the alley, and they'd smoke pot outside of school, and it smelled so nice. I don't know if you smelled pot when you were young, but it had this nice smell. It smells so bad now. We're in the projects, and every Saturday it is so bad. They add stuff in there, and it smells just like skunks. But it's gotten so bad that when you stand next to somebody, it's so acrid it hurts your nose. It's very bad. But here we go. Furious residents of Liberal City claim it stinks of cannabis, and they can't escape years after legalizing marijuana. So they did it to themselves. And Florida's done it to itself. We've allowed this into the environment, and it smells so bad. You know, if you're driving down the road and you smell a skunk, it's not a skunk. They got run over years ago. We got like 2 skunks left in Florida. It's that, okay? Okay, got one more and we're done. This is a special delivery. Mail online special delivery. Woman gives birth during work shift at the FedEx facility after not knowing she was expecting. Special delivery. Such is the world in which we live. So from Sarasota, Florida to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, I'm Charlie Garrett, and that is your CG Prophecy Report for the week.